I will never forget the day my grandfather's will was read. The shock on my parents' faces was worth every second of the pain they caused when they kicked me out at 18. For 4 years they pretended I didn't exist, all because I chose architecture over their precious medical school plans. Grandpa Thomas was the only one who stood by me, offering not just financial support but the unconditional love my parents never could. When they showed up at the reading dollar signs in their eyes, they had no idea what was coming. If you're watching this right now, drop a comment letting me know where you're viewing from, and hit that subscribe button if you want to hear how my entitled parents learned they wouldn't control a single penny of my $3.5 million inheritance. My grandfather Thomas was a legend in the real estate world of Boston. He built his empire from nothing, starting with a single rundown property he renovated himself in the 70s. Some of my earliest memories are of weekends spent at his sprawling estate outside the city. While other kids my age were watching cartoons, I was following my grandfather around his workshop, learning how to measure twice and cut once. Those weekends with him were my escape from the suffocating atmosphere at home. He taught me about more than just building things. He instilled values that my parents seemed to lack entirely: integrity, hard work, the importance of keeping your word, and most importantly, the courage to chart your own path. My father James and mother Amanda lived in a different world. Their universe revolved around status, appearances, and what others thought of them. Our 5-bedroom house in the expensive part of town was selected primarily for the zip code. The luxury cars they replaced every 2 years were chosen based on what their friends and colleagues would envy. Even their choice of me attending Phillips Academy was less about education quality and more about the prestige of the name. From the moment I started high school, their grip tightened. Every grade was scrutinized daily on the school portal. Anything less than an A warranted a lecture about medical school admissions. My father had my entire life planned: top medical school, surgical residency, and eventually taking over his friend's lucrative private practice. My mother had already joined the right country club where she could brag about her son, the surgeon. They monitored my friendships, discouraging any connections with kids who weren't from the right families. My phone was regularly checked, my internet history reviewed weekly. When I wanted to take an art elective junior year, my father called the school to switch me into AP chemistry instead. My mother controlled my clothing choices, my haircuts, even my extracurricular activities. Everything was filtered through the lens of what would look good on a medical school application. The only freedom I had was those precious weekends with grandfather Thomas. He noticed my interest in the architectural plans spread across his office. While my parents pushed anatomy textbooks at me, he quietly supplied me with books on sustainable design and architectural history. In his spacious workshop, I started sketching my own ideas, and he actually listened when I talked about them. During my senior year, I made a decision that would change everything. With my grandfather's encouragement, I applied to Cornell's architecture program behind my parents' backs. My art teacher helped submit my portfolio, and grandfather Thomas drove me to my interview. When the acceptance letter arrived with a partial scholarship offer, I felt for the first time that I might have a future I actually wanted. I kept the letter hidden for weeks, trying to find the courage to confront my parents. The opportunity finally came 2 weeks before graduation, when they started discussing which medical school application workshops I would attend that summer. With shaking hands, I placed my acceptance letter on the dinner table. The silence that followed was deafening. My father's face turned a shade of purple I had never seen before. My mother began crying, not out of happiness, but what she called betrayal. What followed was 3 hours of yelling accusations and finally an ultimatum: reject the architecture program and commit to their pre-med plan or be cut off completely. I chose freedom. The night after my high school graduation ceremony, I came home to find my bedroom door open. My parents had emptied my closet, boxed up my belongings, and left them stacked in the corner. They gave me 3 hours to get out, informing me that they would no longer provide financial support of any kind. My college fund, which they had mentioned throughout my childhood, was apparently conditional on absolute obedience. My mother's final words still echo sometimes when I am trying to sleep. You are throwing away a real future for a hobby. You are no longer our son. Do not come back. I called my grandfather in tears from the driveway. Within an hour, he arrived with his truck, helped me load my few boxes, and drove me to his guest house. The next day, he took me to lease a small apartment near Cornell, and wrote the check for my first semester's tuition balance after my scholarship. When I tried to thank him, he just shook his head. That is what family is supposed to do, Santiago. Support each other's dreams, not just their own. My new life began in that small one-bedroom apartment near campus. The partial scholarship covered about 60% of my tuition, and my grandfather helped with the rest, though I insisted on covering my living expenses myself. I found work at the campus bookstore, picked up weekend shifts at a local hardware store, and even did some tutoring for extra cash. Every Sunday evening, no matter how busy he was, my grandfather would drive the 2 hours to have dinner with me. He would bring containers of homemade food that would last me half the week, and more importantly, stories and wisdom that nourished something deeper. He never came empty-handed always, bringing some architectural book he had found, drafting supplies, or sometimes just a newspaper clipping about sustainable building that had made him think of me. Those dinners became my anchor. While other students went home for breaks and holidays, I built new traditions with my grandfather. He attended every architecture showcase where my work was displayed, proudly introducing himself to my professors. When I made the dean's list my first semester, he framed the letter and hung it in his study alongside his most important business achievements. Despite his support, those years were far from easy. There were many nights when I would finish classes, work a 6-hour shift, then stay up until 3 in the morning completing design projects. I learned to budget every penny to repair, rather than replace, to appreciate the value of things my parents had taught me to take for granted. The hardest moments were the accidental encounters. Cornell was only 2 hours from my parents' home, and twice during my freshman year, I spotted them in town, presumably visiting friends. Both times they looked directly at me and then turned away, continuing their conversations as if I were a stranger. The first time it happened, I cried in my car for an hour afterward. The second time, I just felt numb. Holidays were particularly difficult. Thanksgiving my freshman year was just my grandfather and me at a local restaurant because neither of us felt like cooking. By sophomore year, I had made friends who understood my situation, and their families began including me in their celebrations. Jessica's parents always set an extra place at Easter. Michael's family insisted I join their Hanukkah celebrations. Slowly, I built a chosen family to fill the void my parents had left. My third year brought a major milestone. My sustainable urban housing design won first place in a national student competition. The prize included a $5,000 scholarship and publication in an architecture journal. When the winners were announced, my grandfather was sitting in the audience, the only family member present. The pride in his eyes made every sacrifice worthwhile. It was during the celebration dinner afterward that I first noticed something wrong. My grandfather, always robust and energetic despite being in his 70s, seemed tired. He dismissed my concerns, blaming it on a busy week at work. But over the following months, I noticed more signs. A slight tremor in his hands, losing his train of thought, mid-conversation seeming winded after climbing the stairs to my apartment. By the start of my senior year, I could no longer ignore the changes. During one Sunday dinner, I finally confronted him, insisting he see a doctor. 2 weeks later, he called with news that shattered my world. Stage 4. Pancreatic cancer. Already spread to his liver. 6 months at best, the doctor had told him. Those 6 months were precious and painful in equal measure. I arranged my class schedule to spend long weekends at his estate, cooking for him, as he had done for me, sitting together in his study, as he shared stories of his life I had never heard before. He refused hospital care until absolutely necessary, preferring to remain in the home he had built. We talked about everything in those final months. He shared business advice, life wisdom, and family history. He made me promise to finish my degree, to build something meaningful with my life, to never compromise my integrity for anyone. What he did not do was discuss his will or financial arrangements, despite my awkward attempts to ensure his affairs were in order. 2 weeks before graduation, he was admitted to the hospital. I spent days at his bedside working on my final projects on a laptop while he slept. On a Tuesday morning in May, he squeezed my hand one last time and was gone. I was 22 years old and had just lost the only real parent I had ever known. The funeral was held the following Saturday at the church my grandfather had attended his entire life. I arrived early to greet guests and was stunned to see my parents walking through the door dressed immaculately in designer mourning attire. It had been nearly 4 years since they had acknowledged my existence. They offered stiff formal condolences, as if I were a distant acquaintance rather than their son. Throughout the service, I noticed them speaking intently with various relatives and my grandfather's business associates. During the reception, I overheard my father asking my aunt about Thomas's estate planning. Not once did they mention their relationship with him, their memories, or their grief. Their focus was unmistakable. As people were leaving, my grandfather's attorney, Mr. Peterson, approached me. He was a kind, silver-haired man who had been my grandfather's friend for decades. He informed me that there would be a formal reading of the will the following Friday, and that my presence was specifically requested. I was about to leave when he added, "Your parents have also been invited." Thomas was very specific about who should be present. I spent the week after the funeral in a fog of grief, barely managing to complete my final requirements for graduation. The thought of seeing my parents again made my stomach twist, but I knew my grandfather must have had his reasons. Whatever was in that will, I owed it to him to be there. The law office of Peterson and Associates occupied the top floor of a downtown high-rise. I arrived 15 minutes early, dressed in the one suit I owned purchased for architecture internship interviews. The receptionist led me to a conference room where several people were already seated. My Aunt Elizabeth, my grandfather's younger sister, 2 cousins I barely knew, and my parents looking as polished and cold as ever. My father glanced up as I entered, surprise flickering across his face before he composed himself. My mother's reaction was more dramatic. She stood and approached me with arms outstretched, as if we had parted on good terms just last week instead of with her disowning me 4 years ago. "Santiago, darling," she cooed, placing air kisses near my cheeks. "We have been so worried about you. Your father and I were just saying how wonderful it is that you are finishing school." I stepped back, maintaining distance. "Hello, Mother." "Father," I responded formally before taking a seat as far from them as the conference table allowed. The attorney entered a few minutes later, carrying a thick folder and accompanied by his assistant who set up recording equipment. After expressing condolences and explaining the procedures, Mr. Peterson began reading. First came a video recording of my grandfather filmed 6 months earlier. Seeing him healthy and strong again brought tears to my eyes. In the video, he spoke briefly about his life philosophy and his hopes for his legacy. He thanked various people for their roles in his life, including a pointed thank you to those who demonstrated true family loyalty. My parents shifted uncomfortably at this. Mr. Peterson then read through various small bequests. 20,000 to the church. 50,000 to his longtime housekeeper. A vintage car collection to his brother-in-law. Family heirlooms to various cousins. Charitable donations to several organizations. With each item checked off, my parents leaned forward more intently, clearly waiting for the big-ticket items. The estate home, the investment portfolio, the business holdings. I never expected to be named at all. My grandfather's support through college had been gift enough. So when Mr. Peterson cleared his throat and said, "And to my grandson, Santiago James Reyes, I leave the remainder of my estate, including my primary residence, valued at $1.2 million, my investment portfolio currently valued at approximately $1.5 million, and my controlling interest in Westbrook Properties valued at approximately $800,000, I nearly fell out of my chair. There was a moment of stunned silence before my mother let out a small gasp. My father's pen snapped in his grip. I sat frozen, unable to process what I had just heard. The attorney continued reading, but I barely heard the details about transfer of deeds and investment accounts. My mind was spinning, trying to make sense of what had just happened. $3.5 million. My grandfather had left me everything of significance. I was pulled back to attention when my parents abruptly rose from their seats and came around the table toward me. Their expressions had transformed entirely from shock to calculated warmth. "Santiago, honey," my mother began, her voice. "Honey, sweet, this is such a blessing. Your grandfather was so generous." She placed her hand on my shoulder, squeezing slightly too hard. My father jumped in, his business smile firmly in place. "This is a lot for a young man just finishing college to handle. All these properties and investments require experienced management. Of course, we will handle everything for you while you focus on starting your career. That is what parents are for, after all," my mother added, as if she had not told me I was no longer her son 4 years earlier. I looked between them, momentarily confused by this sudden transformation from strangers back to concerned parents. For a brief second I wondered if this inheritance might actually restore my family. Perhaps this was what my grandfather had intended. "Of course we will manage it for you," my father repeated, his grin widening as he patted my back. "There are complicated tax implications you would not understand. We can meet with our financial advisor next week." Mr. Peterson cleared his throat loudly. "I am not finished with the reading," he stated firmly. "There are specific provisions regarding the management of the estate that Mr. Westbrook was very explicit about." My parents returned to their seats, still wearing confident smiles. My father winked at me across the table. The attorney pulled out an additional document from his folder. "This is a letter Thomas asked to have read in the event that Santiago was present along with James and Amanda Reyes." He adjusted his glasses and began to read. "To my grandson, Santiago. If you are hearing this, then I have passed on, but not before making sure your future is secure. You have shown remarkable character in pursuing your dreams despite tremendous pressure and personal cost. The integrity and determination you have demonstrated make me confident in my decision to leave you the bulk of my estate. To James and Amanda, I have watched with great disappointment how you treated your own son. Cutting him off financially was your right as parents. Cutting him off emotionally revealed a fundamental flaw in your character. I spent the past 4 years getting to know the man Santiago has become without your influence, and I can say with certainty that your loss has been entirely your own." My mother's smile had vanished. My father's face was darkening to a dangerous shade of red. The attorney continued. "As such, I am including the following binding provisions. First, under no circumstances are James or Amanda Reyes to have any management role, advisory capacity, or decision-making authority regarding any aspect of Santiago's inheritance. The trust documents include a detailed record of their previous financial mismanagement, including James's failed business ventures that I bailed out twice, and Amanda's gambling debts that I settled in 2015. This documentation will be provided to the courts should they attempt to challenge these terms." My father stood abruptly, his chair scraping loudly. "This is outrageous," he shouted. Thomas was clearly not in his right mind. Mr. Peterson continued reading, as if there had been no interruption. "Second, the estate will be managed by a professional trustee, Miss Prosen, Diana Rivera, of First Capital Trust, until Santiago reaches the age of 25, at which point full control transfers to him. Third, if James or Amanda Reyes contest this will in any way, their modest inheritance of $50,000 each will be automatically redirected to the scholarship fund for estranged LGBTQ youth that Santiago and I established last year." My mother was now openly crying, though I recognized the calculated nature of her tears from childhood. My father's face had transformed into a mask of rage I knew all too well. "You did this," he spat, turning to me. "You turned him against us for his money." I found my voice for the first time since the reading began. I did not even know what was in his will. "Liar," my father shouted. "You manipulated an old man to steal our rightful inheritance." Mr. Peterson interjected firmly. "Mr. Reyes, your father-in-law was of sound mind, and his wishes are legally binding. If you continue this behavior, I will have security escort you out." My mother switched tactics, immediately moving to my side of the table again. "Santiago, darling, you know this is not right. We are your parents. We have always wanted what is best for you." She reached for my hand. "This misunderstanding with your college choice got out of hand. But we can put that behind us now. We are family." Something snapped inside me at that word. Family. I stood slowly, looking directly into the eyes of the woman who had told me I was no longer her son. Family does not kick their child out for choosing the wrong college major. Family does not pretend their son is invisible when they see him in town. Family does not show up after 4 years of silence, expecting to control his inheritance. My father advanced toward me, finger pointed accusingly. "After everything we did for you, raising you, providing for you, this is how you repay us. By stealing our inheritance with your little sob stories to your grandfather." I felt a strange calm settle over me. "I did not ask for this inheritance. and I did not know he planned to leave it to me. But Grandpa Thomas watched how you treated me when I did not comply with your life plan for me. He saw what conditional love looks like. You ungrateful little. My father began moving toward me with his hand raised. Mr. Peterson immediately pressed a button on his desk, and within seconds 2 security guards entered the room. My father is ready to leave, the attorney stated calmly. Please escort him out. As they were being led away, my mother turned back, tears streaking her perfect makeup. This is not over, Santiago. We are your parents. We have rights. The last thing I heard was my father's voice from the hallway. We will contest this. Mark my words. When everyone else had left, Mr. Peterson handed me a business card with a name and number. This is Diana Rivera, the trustee your grandfather selected. She is expecting your call. And this, he added, handing me an envelope, is a personal letter Thomas left for you alone. I sat in my car for nearly an hour afterward, too overwhelmed to drive the unopened letter on the passenger seat beside me. The next few days passed in a blur. I graduated from Cornell with honors, but the ceremony felt hollow without my grandfather there to see it. I met with Miss Rivera, a sharp, kind woman in her 40s, who explained the details of my inheritance and the protections my grandfather had put in place. The trust was ironclad, she assured me. Your parents can contest, but they will not succeed, and doing so will only cost them their smaller inheritance. That night alone in my apartment for the last time before moving into my grandfather's estate, now my estate, the emotions I had been holding back finally broke through. I cried for the loss of my grandfather, for the parents I never really had, for the years of struggle and loneliness. When my phone rang at midnight, it was Jessica, my closest friend from the architecture program. Without explaining why, I asked if she could come over. She arrived 30 minutes later with ice cream, and listened as I poured out the whole incredible story. Santiago, that is insane, she said when I finished. But your grandfather sounds like he was an amazing man who really loved you. He was the only one who ever really did, I replied. That is not true, she countered. You have built a whole community of people who care about you. And clearly your grandfather saw something in you worth believing in. Her words helped me find the courage to finally open the letter he had left me. Inside was a handwritten note along with a key. Santiago, by now you know what I have left you. What you may not understand is why. When your parents cut you off, I saw it as their greatest mistake and my greatest opportunity. It gave me the chance to know you as a man, not just as a boy. I watched you work multiple jobs while maintaining top grades. I saw you build friendships based on character rather than convenience. I witnessed you develop your talent through dedication rather than entitlement. The key enclosed opens my personal study safe. Inside you will find journals I have kept throughout my life. My hope is that they will continue to guide you when I no longer can. Remember this, true wealth is not measured in dollars, but in how you live your values. Your parents never understood this. I believe you do. All my love, Grandpa Thomas. The following day, I received the first of many legal letters from my parents' attorney, demanding a review of the will and threatening litigation. 2 days later, they showed up unannounced at the estate, attempting to talk their way past the security system. When that failed, they began a campaign of calling every relative, trying to build family pressure for me to voluntarily share the inheritance. With Miss Rivera's help, I hired my own attorney, who sent a single clear response. Any contest of the will would trigger the clause redirecting their $50,000 inheritances to charity, and further harassment would result in a restraining order. Their final attempt came 3 months after the will reading. My mother called from an unknown number, her voice softer than I had ever heard it. Santiago, we want to make amends. We were wrong to cut you off. Please let us be a family again. We do not even need to be involved with the money. We just want our son back. For a brief moment, I almost believed her. Then she added, of course we would hope that as family you would help us with some of our financial obligations. Your father's medical practice has some outstanding loans that are coming due. I ended the call and blocked the number. With that final rejection, I began building my new life in earnest. I completed the transition into my grandfather's home, renovating it room by room with the architectural vision he had always encouraged. I established a small architectural firm, focusing on sustainable urban development, using a portion of my inheritance as startup capital. Within a year, we had our first major commission, redesigning a community center in a historically underserved neighborhood. Perhaps most meaningfully, I established the Thomas Westbrook Foundation, providing scholarships and housing assistance to students who had been cut off by their families. The foundation specifically supported students pursuing careers their parents had not approved of, whether in arts, humanities, or any other path that represented their authentic selves. As the years passed, my business grew steadily. The inheritance gave me the freedom to be selective about projects, choosing only those aligned with my values of sustainability and community enhancement. I built a network of mentors, colleagues, and friends who supported my vision and shared my commitment to creating spaces that brought people together. I dated occasionally but approached relationships carefully, always watchful for signs of the conditional love I had grown up with. At 27, I met Eliza, an environmental lawyer, whose straightforward honesty and genuine warmth gradually helped heal old wounds. She understood my complicated family history without judgment, and stood beside me when my work was featured in Architectural Digest, filling the space where parents would normally stand. 5 years after my grandfather's passing, my first major project was completed, a mixed-use development combining affordable housing community spaces and green technology. At the ribbon-cutting ceremony, I dedicated the project to Thomas Westbrook, the man who taught me that building something meaningful requires a foundation of integrity. I sometimes wonder what my life would have been like had I given in to my parents' demands. Would I have been a miserable doctor living for their approval? Would I have ever discovered my passion for creating spaces that transform communities? Would I have learned the difference between wealth and worth? My grandfather's final gift was not the money or property. It was the freedom to discover who I truly was meant to be. By standing firm against those who would control me with conditional love, I found the strength to build something far more valuable than an inheritance, an authentic life. I never heard from my parents again after that final phone call. Through family, I learned they had moved to Florida after selling their house to cover debts. Sometimes I feel a momentary sadness for what might have been, but it passes quickly. The family I have built around me now, the friends who have become brothers and sisters, the mentors who have become parental figures, these relationships built on mutual respect and genuine care have shown me what real love looks like. If there is one lesson I have learned from this journey, it is this: the family that matters is not always the one you are born into, but the one that supports you in becoming your truest self. And sometimes the greatest act of self-respect is walking away from those who only love the version of you they tried to create. Have you ever had to choose between someone's conditions and your own dreams? Share your story in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life experiences. Your support helps this channel continue sharing stories that remind us all that standing up for ourselves sometimes means standing alone until the right people come along. Thank you for listening. And remember that the life truly worth inheriting is the one you build with your own hands and heart.